Have you ever noticed how fake friends suddenly change when they realize you're no longer falling for their games? One day, they're kind, generous, overly attentive. The next, distant, dry, confusing. But what if I told you that when you finally start seeing through their lies, they don't apologize, they pivot. They won't admit the truth, they won't fix anything. Instead, they play innocent, act hurt, or worse, pretend nothing happened. Yes, I'm talking about the strange shift in behavior that creeps in when your awareness makes them uncomfortable. Some people don't know how to exist around someone they can't deceive. Others pull away because their power over you is gone. And some? They weren't your friends at all. They were actors playing a part. But here's the truth. You don't owe them confusion, guilt, or another chance. The real strength lies in knowing exactly what changed and why it had to. So how do fake friends really behave when the mask slips? And how can Stoic wisdom help you stay calm while they unravel? Stick around, because the final reaction, it's the one they try hardest to hide. But before we dive in, pay attention to this story, which will help you better understand the wisdom in this material. The story of Lauren, eyes wide open. Lauren had always believed in giving people the benefit of the doubt. She was the kind of friend who made excuses for others, stayed silent when boundaries were crossed, and always tried to see the good in everyone. Her friends loved that about her, or so she thought. Whenever plans were cancelled last minute, she told herself they were just busy. When they joked about her behind her back, she laughed it off. When she noticed their tone shift when she shared something good, she assumed she was overthinking. But then one day, something clicked. She overheard two of them talking, mocking a personal story she had once shared in confidence. The words stung, but the tone stung more. It wasn't teasing, it was calculated, cold. That night, she sat quietly in her room, heart heavy, mind racing. The next day, she went to visit her old neighbor, Mrs. Elwood, an elderly woman known for her sharp insight and even sharper tongue. Lauren shared everything with her, down to the smallest details. Mrs. Elwood listened, then smiled faintly. "You ever seen a spider play dead?" Lauren blinked. "A spider?" "Yes. Some spiders don't run when threatened. They curl up still as death. The predator walks away thinking it's harmless, but once it turns its back, the spider moves again. Quick, precise, intentional." Lauren looked confused. Mrs. Elwood continued, "Fake friends are like that. They pretend to be harmless, play innocent, act loving, until they sense that you see them clearly. Then everything changes. They won't confront you. No, that's too honest for them. Instead, they withdraw, grow colder, start twisting the story, not because they're hurt, but because they've lost control." Lauren sat still. The pieces started to click into place. That week, she stopped reaching out, stopped explaining, stopped asking why. And just like Mrs. Elwood said, things shifted. The same friends who once messaged her daily suddenly fell silent. One unfollowed her, another posted cryptic quotes. A third started hanging out with someone who used to hate them all. It was quiet, but calculated. At first it hurt, but strangely, it also felt like freedom. Because for the first time, Lauren wasn't bending herself to keep people who were never really standing beside her. She wasn't blind anymore. And that's when she started to see everything clearly. Fake friends don't get loud when they're exposed. They get quiet. They don't apologize. They shift blame. The moment they realize you see through them, they don't feel guilty. They feel threatened. Because the only thing worse than being caught in a lie is losing the person who used to believe it. So stop chasing closure. You already saw the truth. and that is enough. Before we begin with the first lesson, if you find these videos helpful, I encourage you to subscribe and turn on notifications to stay updated on the latest content. Let's begin. Number 1. They play the victim instantly. Let's talk about one of the most manipulative reactions fake friends use when they realize you're no longer falling for their act. They play the victim. It doesn't start with an apology. It doesn't start with accountability. It starts with sudden sadness. Hurt looks, emotional distance. They don't say, "I'm sorry I lied to you," or "You caught me pretending." Instead, they flip the narrative. Now they're the wounded one. Now you're judging too quickly, taking things the wrong way, or being unfair. And all of it is designed to do one thing, to make you feel guilty for waking up. Here's what's really going on. When you stop being blind to their lies, they panic, because the power they had over you was built on your belief in their goodness. When that illusion breaks, so does their control. So instead of taking responsibility, they reach for a weapon that always worked before: your empathy. They lean on your compassion, your kindness, your tendency to give the benefit of the doubt. And suddenly, the spotlight shifts. It's no longer about what they did. It's about how hurt they are that you could think so little of them. It's not just deception, it's distraction. A tactic to steer your focus away from the truth and back onto their feelings. And this is where Stoic wisdom clears the fog. Seneca said, "The man who is wrong always finds a way to appear wronged." That's the pattern. People who refuse to be accountable will always play the victim. It's not that they're innocent, it's that they're skilled in appearing that way. They manipulate perception to preserve control. But once you recognize it for what it is, the spell breaks. Let me tell you about someone. Let's call him Tyler. Tyler had a close friend, someone he trusted like a brother. But over time, Tyler started noticing patterns, half-truths, excuses that didn't add up, loyalty that only ran one way. When Tyler finally confronted him, calmly, with evidence, the friend didn't defend himself. He cried, said he felt attacked, that he never thought Tyler would turn on him like this. For a second, Tyler almost felt bad. Almost. But then he remembered something. Real friends don't need lies to feel close, and real pain doesn't require an audience. That moment of guilt faded, and what replaced it was clarity. Tyler didn't lose a friend. He lost a manipulator pretending to be one. So, how do you handle it when they play the victim? First, don't fall for the performance. Emotion without accountability is just strategy. Second, stay anchored in facts. What you saw, what you felt, what you know. And finally, let them sit with their discomfort. That pain they're performing, it's the echo of their mask falling off. Let it fall. Because at the end of the day, when you stop being fooled, they stop being powerful. And that's the part they fear the most. Number 2, they accuse you of changing. Let's talk about one of the oldest tricks in the book. When fake friends realize they can't get away with their lies anymore, they say you've changed, and they don't mean it as a compliment. They don't say you've grown. They don't say you've gotten wiser or stronger. No, what they really mean is you've stopped being easy to manipulate. You've stopped nodding along. You've started asking questions. You no longer accept vague answers, half apologies, or inconsistent behavior. And for someone who built their comfort on your silence, that shift feels like a threat. Here's what's really going on. They're not hurt because you've changed. They're hurt because you've evolved beyond the role they cast you in. You used to be the listener, the fixer, the person who didn't ask for much in return. You gave too many chances. You absorbed too many disappointments. And when you finally said, enough, their illusion cracked. So instead of reflecting on their own behavior, they redirect. They label your strength as selfishness, your honesty as arrogance, your boundaries as betrayal. Because if they admit you're changing for the better, they'd have to admit they never deserved your loyalty in the first place. And this is where Stoic clarity helps you hold the line. Epictetus once said, "If you wish to improve, be content to be seen as ignorant or foolish." What he meant is simple. Growth often looks like rebellion to people who preferred the older, quieter version of you. When you start prioritizing your peace, your truth, your integrity, some people will see that as a threat. Let them. Their discomfort isn't your problem. It's their reaction to losing control over someone they thought would never leave. Let me tell you about someone. Let's call her Melissa. She spent years bending over backward for her friend group. She never argued, never questioned, always showed up. But as she got older, Melissa started seeing the patterns, the favoritism, the lies they told about each other, the moments they used her kindness as currency. So she stepped back, set boundaries, stopped replying to every late-night call, stopped accepting the same recycled apologies. And just like that, the tone changed. "You've changed," they said. "You're not fun anymore." But Melissa hadn't changed. She had woken up. And what they called change was just her no longer participating in her own exploitation. So how do you handle it when they accuse you of changing? First, don't defend the growth. Growth doesn't need justification. Second, let them talk. The people who really care will celebrate your evolution. The ones who benefited from your silence will resent it. And third, stand firm. You're not here to stay the same for someone else's comfort. Because at the end of the day, if the only version of you they loved was the one who didn't question them, that was never love. That was convenience dressed as friendship. And once you see it clearly, you never unsee it again. Number 3, they subtly insult you, disguised as jokes. Let's talk about one of the most slippery forms of fake friendship. When they no longer have the power to openly lie, they switch to subtle mockery, not full-blown attacks, not arguments, just jokes, little comments made in front of others, a smirk when you speak up, sarcastic remarks that brush right up against your growth, your clarity, your truth. And when you call it out, they laugh. Relax, it's just a joke. But deep down, you know it's not funny. It never was. It's not humor, it's hostility, sugar-coated and socially acceptable. Here's what's really going on. They know they can't manipulate you directly anymore. You've pulled away. You've stopped tolerating the things they used to get away with. So instead of confronting you, they go underground. Passive aggression becomes their language. Their comments seem harmless. "Wow, someone's fancy now. Guess you're too important for us. You used to be more chill." But every word is meant to sting, to make you question your boundaries, to make you shrink. Because if they can't control you, they'll try to make you feel small for standing tall. This is where Stoic clarity slices through the noise. Seneca said, "Mockery is the coward's weapon. Laughter is their mask." Think about that. Real strength doesn't need to belittle. Real confidence doesn't need sarcasm to feel superior. When someone constantly jokes about the exact parts of you that have evolved, they're not being funny. They're revealing their discomfort. Your growth exposes their stagnation. Your independence reminds them of their dependence. And instead of owning that, they disguise resentment as entertainment. Let me tell you about someone. Let's call him Brian. Brian used to be the yes guy in his friend group, always agreeable, always quiet when things felt off. But after doing some inner work, Brian started saying what he felt, setting limits, choosing peace. And that's when the jokes started. His oldest friend would nudge him in front of others. "Oh, here comes Zen Brian. Can't say anything anymore or he'll meditate us into a coma." Everyone laughed, but Brian didn't, because he knew those jokes weren't jokes. They were reminders. We liked you better when you were silent. So how do you handle it when they start using humor as a weapon? First, trust your gut. If it feels off, it is. Second, don't play along. Don't force a smile to protect their comfort. And third, remember, real friends don't mock your growth. They support it. Because at the end of the day, when laughter is used to shame your evolution, it's not friendship. It's fear. And you were not meant to dim your light just so others don't feel exposed in the dark. If you've watched the video this far, don't forget to leave a comment with a thank God and give it a like if you enjoyed the content. Your support means a lot and motivates me to keep creating more interesting videos. I hope you find inspiration in them and that we continue learning together. Thank you for your support. Number 4. They distance themselves without explanation. Let's talk about one of the quietest but most telling reactions of a fake friend. When you finally stop playing their game, they disappear. No fight, no big argument, no dramatic ending, just distance. They stop calling. They respond with one-word texts. They act cold, disinterested, busy. At first it feels confusing. You replay the last conversation, wondering what went wrong. But deep down, you know the answer. Something changed. You changed. And now, without your blind loyalty, without your emotional availability on demand, without the version of you they used to benefit from, you no longer serve their ego. And rather than say it, they just vanish. Here's what's really going on. Fake friends rarely want to deal with confrontation, especially when it exposes their own selfishness. So instead of admitting they're uncomfortable with your growth or boundaries, they ghost you. But this isn't confusion, it's strategy. By fading away quietly, they avoid accountability while still punishing you. It's their way of saying, "You're no longer useful to me," without having to say anything at all. And that silence, it hurts more than an argument, because you were expecting friendship, and instead you got abandonment. This is where Stoic wisdom becomes your anchor. Epictetus said, "When the wrong people leave your life, the right peace enters." That's not just comfort, it's clarity. If someone leaves because you stopped betraying yourself to please them, that's not your loss. That's alignment. When a friendship is built on your silence, your sacrifice, your lack of boundaries, it was never real to begin with. Their exit is not a rejection, it's a revelation. Let me tell you about someone. Let's call her Jenna. Jenna had a friend she'd known for years. They did everything together. But Jenna was always the one adjusting, always the one apologizing, always the one making space. Eventually, she started setting boundaries. She stopped over-explaining. She stopped rushing to fix things she didn't break. And slowly, the calls stopped. The texts got shorter. The inside jokes disappeared. And then, nothing. It stung. But in that silence, Jenna realized something powerful. She was finally living as herself, and that friend only loved the version of her who stayed small. So how do you deal with it when someone pulls away without a word? First, don't chase. Their silence speaks volumes. Second, don't internalize the distance. It's not about your worth. Third, make peace with the clarity it brings, because at the end of the day, when they disappear after you find your voice, it means they were never listening to begin with. And sometimes, being left behind is how you move forward. Number 5. They try to turn others against you. Let's talk about one of the most manipulative tactics fake friends use. When you finally see through their lies and walk away, they don't just let you go. They go to work behind the scenes, quietly, strategically. They start planting seeds in other people's minds. Not outright slander, but subtle suggestions. She's been acting strange lately. I don't know what happened, he just snapped. They've changed. And suddenly, you're not just losing one friend, you're watching people pull away without even knowing why. But it's not confusion, it's sabotage. And it started the moment you stopped being blind. Here's what's really going on. When fake friends feel exposed, they panic. Not because you hurt them, but because you threaten the version of themselves they've sold to everyone else. You know too much. You've seen the manipulation, and instead of owning their behavior, they flip the script. They play the victim. They build a new narrative, one where you're the villain and they're the wounded party. And they tell it to anyone who will listen, not to heal, but to isolate you. Because if they can't control your mind, they'll try to control your reputation. This is where Stoic wisdom stands taller than the noise. Marcus Aurelius said, "Character needs no defense. It is always revealed in the fire." That means you don't have to argue, explain, or prove yourself. When people believe gossip without asking you directly, that reveals more about them than you. Your character, lived consistently, will outlast every lie told in your absence, because truth echoes, even when whispered. Let me tell you about someone. Let's call him Josh. Josh confronted a longtime friend about constant manipulation. He was calm, honest, and done. No big drama. But within weeks, mutual friends stopped responding. Group chats went silent. Eventually, Josh heard from someone that the friend had been telling people Josh was unstable and aggressive. For a while, Josh felt defeated. But instead of lashing out, he focused on living with integrity. He didn't fight lies with more noise. He let time do what truth always does, rise. And slowly, one by one, people started seeing for themselves who was honest and who was just afraid of being seen. So how do you handle it when they turn others against you? First, don't play defense. You owe no explanations to those who didn't ask. Second, keep showing up as yourself, calm, steady, whole. Third, remember, the people who are meant for you will always look deeper than rumors. Because at the end of the day, when they try to destroy your image to protect theirs, they're not attacking you, they're running from themselves. And nothing exposes fake friendship faster than your refusal to stay silent. If you found this valuable, hit like and subscribe for more powerful insights. Number 6. They accuse you of being too harsh. Let's talk about one of the most manipulative defenses fake friends lean on. When you finally speak the truth, they act like you're the one who's crossed the line. Not because you screamed, not because you insulted, but because you were clear. You named the behavior. You drew the line. You said, "This is no longer okay." And suddenly, they act wounded. You didn't have to say it like that. That was unnecessary. You've become so harsh. But what they call harsh is really just your refusal to stay silent. Here's what's really going on. People who build comfort on deception can't stand the spotlight of clarity. Your directness is a mirror, and they don't like what it reflects. When you stop sugarcoating, stop protecting their ego, and speak plainly, they're forced to confront the damage they've caused. And instead of taking accountability, they retreat into a more convenient story. One where you're the villain and they're just the misunderstood friend. They don't want resolution, they want avoidance. And calling you harsh gives them that exit. This is where Stoic philosophy offers real grounding. Epictetus said, "He who fears the truth seeks comfort in illusion." That's exactly what's happening. Fake friends would rather paint your truth as cruelty than face the reality of their behavior. But don't let their discomfort convince you to dilute your voice. Truth, when spoken from a place of calm and courage, is not an attack. It's a boundary, and boundaries are not betrayals. They are protection. Let me tell you about someone. Let's call her Nicole. Nicole was known for being quiet, agreeable, easygoing, but over time, her tolerance wore thin. One friend in particular kept making everything about himself, interrupting her, dismissing her struggles, and joking at her expense. So one day, Nicole finally said, "This friendship doesn't feel mutual. I feel unheard and disrespected." She didn't yell, she didn't accuse, she just said what was real. And the response? He told others she was mean, cold, and not the same anymore. But Nicole didn't shrink. She stood by her words. And in time, she realized that the people worth keeping in her life never needed her to stay quiet, to stay close. So, how do you handle it when they accuse you of being too harsh? First, ask yourself, were you cruel or were you clear? Second, if your words came from truth, not spite, stand by them. Third, don't let guilt talk you out of growth, because at the end of the day, calling someone too harsh is often just the last defense of someone who can't handle honesty. And if clarity costs you a fake friend, it's a price well paid. Number 7, they eventually reveal their true colors. Let's talk about one of the most inevitable outcomes of seeing through fake friends. Eventually, the mask falls. It doesn't happen in one dramatic explosion. It slips slowly. A pattern becomes clearer. A comment cuts deeper. The silence gets longer. And the more you stay grounded, the more their performance crumbles. At first, they tried to keep up the illusion. Warm messages, half-hearted support, subtle manipulation wrapped in concern. But when they realize you're no longer playing your old role, the agreeable one, the quiet one, the easy-to-use one, they stop pretending, and what was once hidden becomes impossible to unsee. Here's what's really going on. Fake friends rely on your denial. As long as you keep giving them the benefit of the doubt, they thrive. But when you stop justifying their behavior, when you no longer ignore the patterns or rewrite the story to protect their image, they lose power. And when power fades, their true character rises. No more charm, no more sweetness, just cold detachment, pettiness, and the kind of passive aggression that can't be explained away anymore. They reveal themselves not because you changed, but because you stopped pretending not to notice. This is where Stoic wisdom becomes a torch through the fog. Seneca said, "Time is the wisest counselor. It always exposes the truth." And it does. You don't have to force a confrontation. You don't need to dig for answers. Just give it time. Truth doesn't hide forever. People can only wear masks for so long before discomfort, resentment, and ego break through the seams. And when that happens, don't be surprised. Be grateful. Because clarity, no matter how painful, is a gift. Let me tell you about someone. Let's call him Daniel. For years, Daniel had a best friend who always played both sides, supportive when convenient, but distant when Daniel needed him most. Daniel used to excuse it. He's just busy. That's just how he is. But one day, after Daniel made a life change, his friend secretly resented, moving on from a toxic job, growing more confident. That friend simply stopped reaching out. No fight, no goodbye, just silence. And through mutual friends, Daniel learned of the things said behind his back. That was the moment the truth surfaced. Not because Daniel hunted for it, but because time revealed what character always does. So how do you handle it when they show their true colors? First, don't look away. Accept what's being shown to you. Second, don't argue with the reveal. Third, don't mourn a mask. You were never friends with who they pretended to be. Because at the end of the day, when someone shows you who they really are, it's not a betrayal. It's a breakthrough. And it's the moment you stop being fooled and start being free. If you believe this video can help others, give it a like. It helps the YouTube algorithm show it to more people. And don't forget to subscribe for more awesome content coming your way. Share your thoughts in the comments. I will definitely reply.